that's true. Naked Palpatine.
Oh, you pick that one. Fresh out of the clone tank, nude Palpatine is my
Well, that's the first thing I think of when you say Dark Empire Palpatine.
Hello everybody, and welcome to child murder, rape, and other terrible things. Today, I have for you part 1 of my thoughts on Malazan, Book of the Fallen, Book 4, House of Chains. This particular section, we're only focusing on the prologue and Book 1. Now, some backstory here. So, the reason that the book is structured the way it is in this opening section, meaning that we focus on one sole person for over 200 pages, is because back in the day, Erikson likes to switch between POVs constantly. That's just how he does it. But there were a lot of fans who claimed like he just couldn't do it. Like he kept doing it the way he was doing it because he couldn't write in a proper, not proper I should say, but a normal sort of structure where you follow one person from beginning to end. And it really pissed Steven Erikson off. He's like, no, I absolutely can. I just don't want to. I just don't like to do it that way. So this first 200 pages was meant to be a big F-U, in a sense, to be like, I can, but I prefer this way. Also, Karsa Orlong is meant to be kind of a deconstruction of Conan the Barbarian by Robert E. Howard, which at the time of this recording, I've started to read those stories because in general, I did my podcast interview sort of presentation thing with author Joe Bongiorno as he discussed the history of space opera, and I want to read a lot of those old space opera tales as well because it kind of shows the history of Star Wars, and I'm a big Star Wars buff, a big Star Wars Expanded Universe guy. And, but Star Wars itself is a collection of multiple influences from Kurosawa films to Seven Samurai, I think that's another one, to the classic films of the 30s and stuff, and 40s and 50s, and to space opera, which a lot of things from space opera, hell, the first light sword, laser sword, came from a space opera novel, not from George Lucas himself. There's a lot of stuff there. I'll leave a link in the description maybe. It's a great and interesting thing, but it made me want to read a lot of the classic stuff on fantasy and sci-fi and space opera, which is a different category to sci-fi. But again, if you want that discussion, go watch my History of Space Opera video. But Conan the Barbarian was much of like the sword and sorcery sort of fantasy thing. And Conan's, as far as I understand, is very much like he's the good guy, right? But he also is very primitive, right? And he keeps his word, he's honorable, but he also doesn't understand civilization. And Robert E. Howard very much used Conan as a means of like critiquing civilization. And it was in some sense that Conan was pure because he wasn't tainted by civilization, which allows slavery and all these other bad things, and just politics and political maneuvering and all this stuff. And Conan was in a sense beyond that and above that, because he was so ignorant and free of all that it made him somehow better. So kind of the idea is like, is barbarism maybe is in a sense better than civilization? And I guess Erikson very much wanted to push back on that, very much of like, well, no, civilization isn't perfect. There's absolutely been a lot of bad stuff from civilization. But is barbarism really better? And that's kind of where the whole deconstruction of Conan comes to with the character Karsa Orlong. Now, all that to say, non-spoiler-wise, we focus on this character for 200 pages, and he's not a great person at all. He is just frankly not a good friend to those around him that he considers friends, I guess. He is very stuck in what he believes to be true, what he believes to be right, and he has no qualms with raping women and killing young. And so it's very much like, how do you endure an entire section where you just focus on an unlikable person? But at the same time, and this is part of the barbarism thing of like, maybe it's not so much better. But also Erikson's entire book saga is ultimately about compassion and empathy for others. I mean, the second book, Deadhouse Gates, which this is basically a sequel to, Phyllis was not easy to deal with. She was not likable, but you were meant to understand why. Now I feel this book does a better job of making me feel for Karsa more than Phyllis, because I understood it intellectually, but I didn't feel it emotionally. Whereas this, I did. And I think that's just because I'm stuck with him for so long. I'm stuck in his POV for so long that at some point I just started to be like, yeah, he sucks, but I feel bad now. And we just follow this guy's journey from beginning to end till the end of book 1. And then when we finally start book 2 is when it becomes the normal format that we're accustomed to by Erikson. But, even if it was a big FU to fans, honestly, it was just really refreshing to sort of get that sort of... I mean, I wouldn't want that to be the norm. I prefer Erikson's approach, but I like that we just got to focus on one character and have him go through a significant arc in one section. It was just nice. Karsa Orlong's a very complex character, but he definitely goes through a big arc just in this opening section alone, and it feels like a story in of itself. So, and coolly ties into some stuff as well. But that's pretty much it. Non-spoiler wise, the prologue is not gonna... It doesn't make any sense to me. But I do know that the character in the prologue is the main character of book 5. And book 5 takes place before books 1 through 4. So, I'll understand the prologue after I read the next book. But it was interesting, and it definitely set a tone and mood for this story. But that's it for non-spoilers. If you don't want my spoiler thoughts on this book, it's time for you to go. Before I actually initiate the spoiler talk, though, I will say that honestly, this Karsa Orlong's opening section was one of my favorite parts of the entire Malazan series so far. I've heard others online say that it's boring. I don't know what they're talking about. I loved this section. But we'll see how we feel about the rest of the book as we go on. But yes, I do recommend it. Spoiler time though, if you don't want it, bail. Troll Sangar is the name of the character in the prologue, and he will, of course, be the main character of the next book, as far as I'm aware. He's sentenced to death on a beach. Troll is a slave / captive and feels betrayed by the people who are putting him to death. And then he describes a shorning, which just sounds awful. But then we jump ahead to book 1, Faces in the Rock. A lot of things to say here. We got 7 gods of the Templar, which is the tribe that Karsa belongs to. It's interesting, though, at this point in the story, we've had 3 books, and I almost immediately went, well, these gods aren't real, or at least not in the sense that he believes them to be. And, it's only because I have context for this world. We meet Karsa's father, Singe, and the grandfather and son are ashamed of Sinag, or Singed, I don't know, the father of Karsa, because he's basically been a farmer his whole life. He's done no fighting, he's fought in no wars, but he's been at peace, and for some reason that is shameful. Now, Karsa really fancies this girl named Dalish, even though she's been totally flirting with this other guy the entire time. But the way that Karsa feels about it is that he has ambition, bigger plans for the future, whereas the other guy's free to just happy where he is. So he thinks if he just has enough ambition that eventually Dalish will see it and join him. Another interesting fact about Karsa's dad is he doesn't believe in their gods and refuses to bless Karsa's pursuit of rape and murder. He doesn't want to bless Karsa's mission. And obviously that hurts Karsa a lot. But, his dad morally won't stand for it. But Karsa just sees it as him being slighted. Karsa gets a horse named Havoc, which I thought was pretty cool. We also just casually get mentioned like a sentence or two that Karsa sacrificed all of his siblings. Fun. There's this amazing dialogue scene between Karsa's grandfather and his father, and oh man, just peak writing. It was so good. Bareth, a friend of me, to Karsa, has a discussion with Karsa. If they win, the elders will change their tune. So Bareth is more of the brains. They finally go on their mission, right? They go to these lands. This is the northern area of Genabacus, by the way. And he's pilfering, he's destroying, but they go to rest. And Bareth talks about but if we come back and we succeed, the elders weren't really for us going. They didn't really support it. But if we come back successful, they're going to be praising us. They're going to say, it was their idea to begin with. They're going to take all the credit, because they'll change their mind when they see that they're successful. But all Karsa can see is that his friend's calling them liars. But he started traveling with Bareth, which I forgot to mention, and this other guy named Dalem. And they go to this town, and they kill a bunch of dudes, and then they rape the woman. Uncomfy. Karsa beats up a dog, asserts dominance, shows that he's the alpha male, and names the dog Na. Also, we casually learn that Karsa has 4 lungs, so that's something. They find this place with ancient writings, and it speaks of Ikram and a connection between the tribes of Karsa's people, which was interesting. The Forcasail, which are these white beings with 4 or 6 arms, I forget, but they're known as demons to Karsa's people. Now there's this Forcasail named Calm, bringer of death, who is stuck underneath a stone rock, and they save her. And she beats up Dalem, and he starts bleeding from the head a lot. But they make it out. They go to this next town to fight, and Dalem is cut in half. And Bareth is beheaded. This is when they go to another town, and I thought, how is this barbarian, this tribesman, getting away with slaughtering so many towns? But no, the army got news of this, and they have put him into prison. And this is here where he gets introduced to Torvald Nom, aka Knuckles. Now, Nom might sound familiar to you. Well, yes, Torvald is a cousin to Ralik Nom from Darushistan. We also learned that the tree sap or whatever, the oil that Karsa puts on his sword, the blood oil, is the same sort of thing that Botchlin drank in the short stories that made him go crazy with this woman, which was basically rape, but we're not going to get into that, but it's the same sort of thing, which I thought was a cool little connection. We also kind of figure out here, as things start getting pieced together, that this is 2 years before Gardens of the Moon, because the Pale, the sacking of Pale is still happening. And it's Karsa's not for slavery. He's very much against that, but he's completely okay with rape. Priorities, man. Karsa summons lightning, though he doesn't remember doing so. This is also, we're like 160, 70 pages in, I forget, but at this point, Karsa's starting to realize that he has flaws and admits as such. Also, Tisti Edor manipulating Karsa, maybe? We also learn that Karsa does not get affected by magic, which is very interesting. And then the big revelation at the end of book 1, which is that Karsa is a Thelamin Toblaki, which is, if you don't remember, it's the same as Belladon and Night Chill from Guardians of the Moon. Also an interesting tidbit that from the Thelamin came the Barghast and Trell. And there you have it. I really loved it. Especially once Torvald got introduced, because they have an amazing friendship here, or that forms, and I adored it. It's quite a good opening section. Will the rest of the book hold the same caliber? I doubt it, but it was really good and I really enjoyed it. But that's pretty much it for my thoughts on just that first book. We'll probably do 2 books in the next video, if not 3, but I just wanted to focus on Karsa for this one. And what a great introduction it was. We learn by the very end that it ties directly into Deadhouse Gates because he was at the mines, the Otorio mines, and it all comes full circle. What will his role be in the current day timeline moving forward? I don't know, but I'm vastly curious to find out. I can't wait to see Karsa again. It probably won't be for a while though, because we already had 200 pages with him, so Steven Eckson's probably going to do his best to avoid him for at least the next 200, if not 300 and 400, but we'll see. Anyway, till next time, guys. May Hood watch over you. I guess. Anyway, bye-bye.